Okay, welcome to Chapter 1, Section 3, Beginnings of Civilization. Last time in the notes we talked about some of the advancements going into the Neolithic Revolution and moving forward from 10,000 BC to about 3,000 BC in that area. And you have some new technologies that come around. You know, obviously people were farming more. We see that they could weave their own clothing from animal hair or vegetable fibers. This obviously was happening all over the world. Different cultures were emerging with different technologies. Sometimes they came into contact with one another and shared their technologies. We're going to talk a little bit about that in this section. But this, 3000 BC or so is right around the beginnings of what we call civilization. And we're going to look at how did the first cities emerge? Where did they come from? What are the basic features of civilization? So in order to be characterized as a civilization, certain basic features have to be present. And how do cultures spread and change? In what ways do people obviously interact with one another and take their culture from one place to another? Okay, so farmers begin cultivating land, as we saw. The first places that they do this, and this is a very key thing, all right, river valleys. We're going to talk about several different river valleys, the Nile, for example, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus River Valley, different river valleys. And let's just stop for a second and think, why would people settle along river valleys? What would it be about river valleys that would be a good place to set up a community? Well, number one, obviously water, fresh water, water that you can drink. Unlike ocean water or seawater, you can drink fresh water out of rivers. Animals are going to be near rivers, so it's a good place to capture or kill animals. You're going to have lots of vegetation around river valleys. River valleys are going to be a source of water for crops because remember, now they're growing food. They're settling down, and the river is a source of water for their crops. All of this is going to lead to what's known as a surplus or extra food. When you have extra food, you can grow a large population. Famous saying I like to use is, if you can feed them, you can breed them, and you will. All right, that's just the way nature works. If there's enough food to take care of a community, then you will enlarge the size of your community. So there it is. Surpluses helped populations expand. And as populations grew, some small villages eventually grow into larger cities. In addition to the good things that river valleys provided, transportation, watering crops, obviously water to drink, a place for animals, there are also some challenges that farmers and people face, and one of those big challenges is flooding, right? Especially when we get to the Huanghe River in China. But all of these rivers flooded, and so flooding has devastating effects on the population. It also is other people. If you have a civilization along a river valley and you have nice fertile crops and a good place to live, other people are going to want that territory. So you are going to have to defend your land. And so many places had to build high walls around their cities and learn to use different military techniques. So some of these early civilizations had to become very warlike to defend what was theirs. Your book does talk about a couple of cities in the Americas. We're not going to get into that for a while, but a couple of the cities, the Aztecs, they actually developed on a swamp, lake. It wasn't a river valley. And also the Incas, who actually developed in the mountains, in the Andes Mountains. What are the basic features of a civilization? Okay, this is the important part of this section. So there are certain things that historians look at and say, okay, was this a civilization? What key things or key features were there? A civilization, here's your definition, is a highly complex, highly organized social order. Historians distinguish eight basic features found in most early civilizations, and you need to know all 8 of these and what they are. So you need to know them and know their definitions. Number 1, cities. A city is obviously has a larger population than a village, and there are also some other characteristics about the cities. You have leadership, which we're going to talk about. Central government, well-organized central government. Maybe a headman, a king, a council of elders. Some sort of government developed to make sure that enough food was produced and that people were getting the food and that they were being protected from outside forces. So you're going to have a military, some form of defense, and governments usually take the lead in this. We'll get into why governments are formed and how they come about and some theories about that. But for the most part, people needed governments to defend them and to keep things running smoothly and orderly. Complex religions. Ancient peoples were polytheistic. Polytheistic, another vocab word, meaning they believed in many gods. All right, so they assigned gods to different things in nature. You know, the god of the wind, the god of the sun, the god of the night, the god of the crops, whatever it was, the god of the rivers. And each of these things they would worship, they would pray to, they would sometimes offer sacrifices to. It became a central part. And because of this, you needed priests, and priests would be there, your religious leaders, and they would explain the things that were happening and tell you what you needed to do to gain favor from the gods. And there were different rituals that emerged, and prayers that emerged, and special holy days that emerged. All of these things were brought about through this complex religion. They hoped that the gods would obviously ensure good crops, help them in battle, maybe have large families, all of these types of things they pray to the gods for. Job specialization. That just means that people did different things. No one person could master all the skills that they needed, so different people did different things. We had artisans back then, craftspeople. You obviously had farmers, but that wouldn't be a specialization. You're going to have priests, you're going to have government officials, you're going to have scribes, artists, road builders, architects, all sorts of different things for job specialization. Social classes. This is also something, and we're going to see this as a pyramid where you have the very, very elite at the top, maybe even a ruler, a king, a pharaoh, priests under him, maybe military officials below that, and as you drop down, there's more and more in each of these classes. And these as you go lower down the social ladder, there becomes a larger population. So finally, you get to maybe farmers at the bottom, and maybe even below them, slaves. But this social class structure, very rigid social class structure, emerges. Arts and architecture. So a civilization produces arts, and usually they would be symbols of power for the rulers, like the Great Pyramids. Many times they would also be dedicated to the gods. The religion reflects your religious beliefs. Public works, meaning roads and bridges and aqueducts and irrigation systems. All of these things would be under the public works, and you would have certain people. Usually the government would direct these public works, and you would have to have tax money. So again, now taxes and things like that would be a part of a civilization. And finally, a writing system. Now, not all civilizations had a writing system. We're going to see that the Incas later on, they had no writing system. But many of the early societies, many of the early civilizations did have a writing system. You have hieroglyphics and cuneiform and different things like that we will be talking about, that your book goes into a little more detail about. How do civilizations spread and change? Well, civilization spread when ancient rulers gain more power and they go out and they conquer. So through warfare and conquering other lands, you are now spreading your civilization to other people. When you conquer them, you have them adapt maybe your language, your religion, your customs, your beliefs, all of those things spread. Eventually, powerful rulers we're going to see created city-states and empires. So as they conquer more land and more territory, they govern other peoples, other cultures, and bring them into their own. And that's what an empire is. When a ruler or a group conquer another group and bring them into their own sphere. A city-state included a city and all the surrounding lands and villages. So it would be governed from this city by usually one leader or maybe a council of leaders. And their armies, their militaries would be in all of these lands controlling them. Maybe they would set up governors in each of these little villages, and they would answer back to the one leader in the central city. And there it is, a group of these states, territories ruled over by one ruler. Civilizations change when the physical environment changes. So you could have massive floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions are going to change and sometimes even wipe out civilizations, cause them to move to other places. There it is. A tremendous volcano wiped out the entire Minoan civilization. Interactions among people. So not just conquering, but maybe trade. Trade is a big way that civilization spread. So beliefs and ideas, when you come into contact with other people, maybe you intermarry with these other people, you bring your culture to them, they bring their culture to you. This is called cultural diffusion. Cultural exchange, cultural diffusion, that's going to be a key thing that we're going to see throughout the rest of this year as well. We're going to see that term cultural diffusion used a lot. The blending of cultures, there it is. The spread of ideas, customs, and technologies from one people to another. Cultural diffusion occurred through migration, that's people moving from one place to another. Trade, the bartering, selling, buying of goods. Interaction with people, and of course warfare. When people conquer another land, they bring their customs and they adapt the customs of the people that were already there. So there's your cultural diffusion. Let's wrap up section 3. Which of the following is not a feature of early civilizations? All right, so remember, you have 8 key things: cities, well-organized governments, cultural diffusion, or public works. Okay, don't get confused by this because we did talk about all these things, but only one of them was actually not in that list of 8. Cultural diffusion occurs through, how does cultural diffusion occur? Hunting and gathering, migration, civilization, and warfare. Migration, trade, and warfare. Religion, trade, and warfare. So I would say probably warfare has something to do with it, since warfare is in 3 of them and they're kind of be tricky. We also have trade in 2 of them, so probably trade has something to do with it. And this is how you can find ways to answer questions that you're not real sure about. At least get down to 2 choices and then guess from there. So we can have migration, trade and warfare, or religion, trade and warfare are probably the 2 choices that they want you to look at. So it's either religion or migration. And migration means movement of people. Migration was already in this one too. So again, it's kind of like saying, migration's probably one thing because they're putting it in 2 different things. Trade's in 2 different things, and warfare's in 2 different things. So it's kind of like almost giving you the answer by how it lists the other things. And there it is. Cultural diffusion was not one of the features. You have cities, well-organized government, and public works. They were 3 of the 8. Migration, trade, and warfare is how cultural diffusion takes place. All right, if you had any questions or any problems, maybe go back through the notes, look these things back up, make sure you know those 8 key features of a civilization and be able to explain them for class tomorrow. We'll probably do something about that in class. To show me that you read these notes, that you listened to me, and that you know this part of the chapter. Make sure you also have read all of the chapter by now and be prepared for a quiz or a test. All right.